Welcome to Pop Culture Retro, which was recently voted the 15th best podcast by the residents of the Golden Years Retirement Community in Boca Raton, Florida. Each show, we'll revisit some of your favorite pop culture memories with insider and outsider perspectives. Now, please help me welcome your hosts, Ike Eisenmann and Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Pop Culture Retro. I'm one of your hosts, Jonathan Rosen, along with the man who once defeated Hervé Villechaize in a 2 out of 3 falls wrestling match after an intense day of filming Fantasy Island, Ike Eisenmann. Ike, how you doing today?
Yeah, well, it's only because he conceded. He's a tough cookie, man.
And I'm pleased that you are wearing your Pop Culture Retro t-shirt today.
So, yes, I've got mine. It's hard to see Jonathan's, but you can see mine. But of course, everyone out just listening to audio won't know what we're talking about. But it's our new logo, our new t-shirts. We're all excited. I'm finally dressed up for the job. I've got my uniform on, so I'm ready to go.
Well, as you can see, again, not 40, but if you could see by my background, today I'm really excited because we decided to talk about the cartoons that we loved as kids. And people don't realize this. And I tell my kids all the time that it used to be a time that cartoons weren't like, you couldn't just turn on TV and watch cartoons. It's like, it was a special moment to wake up early on Saturday mornings and get the whole slate of cartoons because they weren't present. It wasn't like an option like now. So I got TV guides, always look for which cartoons were going to come. The Friday night before the new season, I don't know if you remember, they had all these specials from the network shows that would introduce the following Saturday's cartoons. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember that when they did that?
I don't really remember that. That's why that's why this is interesting, because like you remind me of these things that I don't necessarily recall. So I don't remember that, but I certainly do remember planning my entire Saturday morning around the television.
And I think that went on. I think that was like the 60s to 80s. At the end of the 80s, it really stopped. It was like no more Saturday. I don't think Saturday mornings was the event that it was, for me growing up, because I think it really stopped. And that's when you started having all these cartoons like everywhere. They're like, channels of cartoons and things. And like, I think that's when Disney started coming around with their programming, and you could get cartoons more frequently. So it really was an event. I would get up like, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning on Saturday to sit in front of the TV and watch cartoons all day till like noon.
Well, you're more hardcore than me. I wasn't up that early, but sure. But it was that thing. It's like you get up, turn on the TV, pour a bowl of cereal, and plop down right on the floor, like right in front of the television.
Right.
So yeah, it was a big deal. Yeah, there were some interesting things, and we'll talk about it later in the show. What happened in the 80s to sort of shift all the dynamics about animation, but that's for later. For now, we want to cover like the amazing, the overwhelming number of classic cartoons that have been on since the 50s and 60s. It's really kind of crazy, because when I started looking them up, of course, I immediately just spilled out all the titles that I was obsessed with and watched all the time. But then I started searching for them just to see, and a lot of titles came up that I'd forgotten about.
Same.
Which were amazing, and they're just
shows that I watched too, that I liked.
Oh yeah, no, I'm sure. You're going to bring up many more probably than I am, because that's usually the case. You're a bigger consumer than I was, but I definitely participated.
I watched them. You were in shows. I watched them. So.
Yeah. There you go. But yeah, it was it amazed me how the 60s was animation grew and grew and grew, but it just seems like the 60s was really when it caught on. Mm-hmm. and it seemed like it started with the Flintstones. I know there were other cartoons. There's a lot of cartoons guys have a history, of course, going all the way back to the beginning of filmmaking. So it wasn't like it was something new in the 60s, but original shows produced for television, it just seemed in my mind, and I don't know historically, I didn't really read this, but it seemed like it centered around Flintstones and the huge success of that show, because it was a primetime show. You know, that wasn't a Saturday morning show. It was a primetime.
Mm-hmm.
They call it an animated well, today they'd call it an animated sitcom. And you know, again, you know, we used to watch it. It was just a funny show, and one of my favorites, and it remained a favorite of mine that I've watched forever. As long as I continue to watch cartoons, I was watching the Flintstones.
The Honeymooners knockoff, basically.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah, right. Yeah. I, knew that, but it wasn't in my head.
Right. So you watched it during when its initial run on primetime.
Yeah, I seem to remember watching it because I know I guess it ran from 1960 to 1966. So I would have been 4 years old towards the end, but it went right into reruns and syndication pretty quickly. Right. I don't think it stayed off the air for very long. So I was exposed to it whenever it was on television. And it could be a false memory I have, just because it was so much a part of my viewing experience growing up, that maybe I didn't see it in prime time, but I felt like, yeah, there were nights when we were watching that, definitely watching that show, but I can't say for certain.
I never got the Flintstones. I mean, that was before me, but it was like definitely there growing up. I mean, I watched it constantly, that and the Jetsons, the sim. And I remember the big event when they had the Jetsons Flintstones crossover. I was all into that.
Oh yeah. I remember that too. Yeah.
Right. I did watch it religiously also. I mean, that was one of the shows that I did love growing up, and but me, it was like, a weekday afternoon type thing. It wasn't one of my Saturday morning things, so that wasn't on then really. Yeah.
Well, I mean, for me, I like the adult humor. I mean, it was adults acting like actually kind of adults acting like children, which is really funny, but it was just funny stuff. We'll cover what we liked and didn't like about various shows, but I preferred, the entertainment value being more on an adult level than necessarily the ones that catered to children.
Speaking of which, I mean, look, I was just looking at some of the things in the 60s. You had one of the best ones for that is the Bullwinkle show, the Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Oh, for sure. Oh my gosh, for sure. I loved Rocky and Bullwinkle. Absolutely loved it. Yeah, and that was another one. I mean, just absolutely rich with adult humor, for sure. Not that I got every joke, but
right.
Yeah.
I didn't get the jokes then. I got them much more later on.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Well, it's something that could be appreciated as you got older.
I loved all the Dudley Do right there, the Sherman and Mr. Peabody, all the ones that were in that Rocky and Bullwinkle one, and George of the Jungle. So every single one of those. I bought the sets later on. I bought the Rocky and Bullwinkle sets on DVD, and so I still love the show. It's such a fun show to look back on and watch.
Well, I that's what I think. I don't know, the classic nature of these shows and their continued popularity, at least from a nostalgia point of view or a pop culture point of view, I think is solely rests on the fact that they're trying to appeal to grown-ups as much as entertain kids with animation. That was the key. And when things started shifting more towards, I'm going to bring up Scooby-Doo, I think, being much more geared towards children and not so much the grown-ups. It's when it started to lose me.
and to be all right, Scooby-Doo, and that came to that same decade, right? I think it was late 60s. Scooby-Doo, was it?
You know what? I did not look up the chronology of Scooby-Doo.
I'm almost certain that it was like late 60s, and Scooby-Doo to me is definitely in my Mount Rushmore of cartoons.
Oh, it's one of the it is for many people. I know that. I totally get that. I'm just outing myself, as I always do, as being a very eccentric child. I just I don't know. I enjoyed watching it. I in my notes I wrote down, thought Scooby-Doo was silly, but watched it anyway. Because because there's a point at which with limited entertainment, that's the cartoon that's on now. You don't have a choice. So I'm gonna watch the cartoon that's on now, even if I think it's silly. So yes, I was exposed to a lot of Scooby-Doo.
But the thing with Scooby-Doo is, out of all the cartoons that decade, I think that's been the most enduring because it's still here. They're still making new series of Scooby-Doo, and they still make new movies. I think like 2 or 3 times a year they come out with new Scooby-Doo movies, and every single time one comes out, I see it pop up on Amazon, and guess who's purchasing it?
That's great.
I buy every one. I love every single Scooby-Doo. I love almost every version of the series. You've not seen them in some time, I'm assuming, then. Right?
No, admittedly it's been a very long time.
So they have they have this different version. Like in the past, they had Mystery Incorporated series, which was like kind of creepy. Like it wasn't like a standalone each episode. It was a standalone, but they had like a thread weaving, a season-long thread of a show. They had the Be Cool Scooby-Doo, which I like, and then now they're doing the Scooby-Doo and Guess Who, which is, I think, current, which every episode is like a different guest star, formulaic guest star, celebrity guest star appearing on it, helping solve the mysteries. So like I said, I am still watching Scooby-Doo. As you see that's my background today. That's my virtual background. Yeah. I love that show so much. It's just something about it.
Well, like I said, it's been that way for a whole lot of people. And I'm not, when I say this, I'm not disparaging the show. It's just that was my little oddball brain, when I was a kid, because I was thinking back on it when we first talked about just doing this as a topic. My head immediately went to my favorite cartoons, period, growing up, and I'll just talk about those too right away. I mean, really, I loved the Looney Tunes, Bugs Bunny, Roadrunner, and those cartoons, and the Tom and Jerry's from MGM, and I think I gravitated to those because they sort of end up getting, compared to the newer animation, the Hanna-Barbera animation. And I was an animation freak. I liked high quality animation and well-drawn characters and well-drawn action. And those cartoons are just, I mean, even for me, more so than the Disney shorts, in spite of how great Disney's animation was, those seemed to me truly the height of cartoon animation for me. And so I was in love with those forever and still am today.
The Bugs Bunny, you mentioned the Bugs Bunny, and Bugs Bunny is another one that was always on. Yeah. Again, like the Flintstones, it was constantly on, like, afternoons. So I would always be able to watch all of them. I love Bugs, I love Daffy, and all those things. Tom and Jerry, to me, is a thing. I never got into it as much, and I'll say why. Because it was a lot like the Tweety Bird and Sylvester thing. I understand that Tom was trying to catch Jerry. I understand, but I always thought. Like, and I'm going to say now I'm an adult, I could use these words. I always thought Jerry was like a little bastard. I was like, the things that he did, and they had the things that he did to that cat. I mean, like, putting it in boiling water, chopping him up with a knife like to pieces. I hate this little mouse.
It was a cruel and violent show. There's no doubt about it. I mean, or the cartoons were. I completely agree with that. But again, I just liked watching the quality of the animation. I think I sort of distanced myself from the actual subject matter. But yeah, Sylvester and Tweety Bird is kind of the same thing in a way, because you got these two cartoon characters and one wants to eat the other one. I mean, that's just the bottom line. He wants to catch him and eat him, and if he succeeds, that's the end of the show. And I, especially with Tweety Bird, I used to just absolutely cringe when Sylvester got him in his mouth.
No.
He because that happened more times than I care to think. And then of course Tweety breaks free or gets out in some way. But I just thought, oh my God, this cat
There's like
is actually
dynamite in the mouth.
Yeah, or something, or chipping away at his teeth with a chisel and a small hammer. I mean, it's just horrendous stuff. But I think again, that just went to, I don't know. It's like Three Stooges, that slapstick, physical comedy that we, it goes all the way back to, good grief, vaudeville, the very earliest days of theatrical entertainment and comedy. It's like Punch and Judy. There's a Punch and Judy. Yes. That's the original puppet show. A man beating his wife, and his wife beating her husband with a stick. That's where, and of course it's a weird human, very, I don't know, very strange human.
Look how funny this domestic abuse is, kids.
Yeah, I know. I mean, yes, it's like, wow, so okay, we got a whole lot deeper than I anticipated talking about cartoons.
No,
but yeah,
it didn't bother me. No, Roadrunner didn't bother me as much. Because that was the setup. It was fun to see Wile E. Coyote get, hurt somehow by his own inventions.
Yeah.
And but the Acme. And first of all, Acme must have terrible reviews on like Amazon, because every one of their things, like,
yeah, none of them work. Yeah, they don't work right. But yeah, that was another show where the coyote wants to eat the bird. He wants, it's well, then there's Elmer Fudd and Bugs Bunny. It was all about one character wanting to kill the other one at the end of the day, and they're never able to, from one reason or another. But gosh, I love those. I love them.
And now a lot of those cartoons are being placed in. I should, this is going deep into a place with like warning labels for the violence. It's incredible to me that they have like things on there now that kids can't handle this. So.
Yeah, I know.
Which other ones in the 60s did you like? Which are the other ones that you grew up on that
well, the Jetsons, of course, that's in there. I mean, just running through titles. Underdog, I loved Underdog.
I loved Underdog as well.
Speed Racer was a huge favorite of mine, and that was kind of probably mine and a lot of people's introduction to Japanese animation. The Herculoids was one I was really fascinated by. And that was a short-lived series, and I know it just ran a lot in syndication again back when cartoons were running. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, that one, which is a very strange cartoon, I liked it because it was very comic book like, in terms of the drawings, the animation, the characters. It reminded me more of comic books than just animation. And not that you were very into comic books. I know I wasn't. I was into the artwork of comic books to a certain extent. In my youth, and so that's what attracted me about that. But I mean, one of my absolute favorites, and it's funny, when I was looking up lists of 60s cartoons, maybe because it's not a cartoon but it is animation, was Gumby. I think Gumby was one of my absolute favorites, and I think because it's animation, it qualifies as a quote unquote cartoon, at least in my mind. But that had to be one of my absolute favorites.
Just by the way, pop culture retro self promo. If you want to talk about Gumby, Alison Arngrim's mom did that, and we talk about that in that episode. So if you want to go look at that,
yeah, there you go. Yeah, definitely. Oh man.
But did you see the Speed Racer movie when it came out?
Oh yeah. I like that film. Okay.
I did too.
All right. Oh, I'm actually glad to hear that.
No, I liked it as well, and it has, first of all, Speed Racer has one of the catchiest cartoon theme songs I think ever.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. Most definitely. No, I loved the film, what the Wachowskis did with that. And I thought it was amazing. Well, it seemed to make sense. I mean, their whole background is steeped in Japanese animation and their stories seem to come out of the lore of that culture's entertainment, and so it seemed to make sense. I thought they did a really good job with it, and I really enjoyed it. But I enjoyed it as well. A bit of a Wachowski freak. Just off topic, have you seen Cloud Atlas?
I started watching it and I never finished it.
Yeah,
I heard
it's a bit of a challenge, but man, it's become another
really liked it all the way through.
Well, I've seen it like 4 times. So yeah, I liked it. But it's weird.
To.
It's very strange. It's very strange and very out there. And it's a very different kind of movie, even for them. So it's not gonna be everyone's cup of tea. But anyway, that's it. Enough of the Wachowskis. Back to cartoons.
Well, you just mentioned comic books, and because one of the ones that I love from the 60s, again, was I didn't get to see it originally, but it was on all the Man one, Weird-Man, SpiderMan, and they had all the Fantastic Four, they had Thor, so they had all these cards, and the animation was terrible because it was like a lot of times it was just like stills moving across a background. So the animation was not great, but I love that cartoon.
Well, yeah, I mean, I didn't, because I wasn't into the comic books that deep, so I didn't. It wasn't a big deal to me to see Spider-Man sort of come to life on screen, because they were absolutely terrible animation, and
it was cheaply done animation, really cheaply done animation.
Yeah. And yeah, so there was no draw to that for me, but I remember the theme song,
Yes. Again, another great theme song. So many cartoons have great theme songs. Yes.
Yeah, Gumby is another one. I mean, I'm embarrassed to say I was walking around singing it in my head, getting my thoughts together for this show. And as a matter of fact, this is just a very, very, very wild, weird piece of personal trivia from my life. In the late 70s, like 79, 80, my friends and I actually, I don't know, we were really into Gumby. We were watching the show. We were talking about Gumby. Several of them were musicians, and one of us threw out this wild idea about doing a punk version of the Gumby theme. And it went from, oh my God, that's genius, we should do that, to we actually did it. We got the rights to the theme from whoever owned it. Yeah, I haven't looked it up. We actually recorded it and had it pressed on a green vinyl 45. I did the artwork for the label and the sleeve, and we actually got airplay on a late night. There was a guy in Los Angeles. Gosh, oh shoot, I should have written his name down. Dr. Demento.
Oh, I know that, of course.
Well, yeah, because he was like one of the original disc jockeys with a large syndicated show that did alternative music, and he was in the middle of the night. He was late at night when his program was on, and he ended up picking it up and playing the bloody thing. So I can actually say I produced a record that got airplay.
Oh wow!
My brother sang the lyrics, and it was just like driving, like, you shall see what Gumby can do today. Gumby. It was just nuts. It was absolutely nuts. But I mean, these were great musicians. It was a really good recording. And somebody somewhere out there, because we actually sold some, and we sold some at Tower Records, and it was very very fun. But yeah, we that's how much we all liked it, that we decided.
Do you still have the recording? Do you still have the record?
I don't have one. I do not have one.
Oh.
I know it kills me. It kills me, but somehow in all my personal memorabilia, that just, like, I don't know, ended up in the wrong box that went away. But that was a blast. So even those the theme songs of these cartoons are bigger earworms, for me than popular music, actually.
Yeah, no, I agree. So many. We could just do a show on cartoon theme songs, but there was so many great ones, and many of the ones that I like. But just even talk about the Flintstones had such a great theme song too. So right.
Oh yeah.
That decade produced a lot. I mean, talking about cartoons. I mean, I really came into it like more in the 70s. That was my era, I guess, starting with cartoons. But I was just looking at the list. I was just talking about Scooby-Doo. How many knockoffs came out right after Scooby-Doo about a group of kids running, running around like the country, driving around the country and solving mysteries. It was like one after that. I don't know if you saw some of these. I wrote down a lot of them. That Funky Phantom, and I watched all of these. Speed Buggy, Captain Caveman, Goober and the Ghost Chasers, Inch High Private Eye, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kids, Jabberjaw, New Shmoo, and they even did the Josie and the Pussycats was the same theme. That them going around solving mysteries, and that's another great theme song, by the way.
Oh yeah, another one that I could probably sing every word to, and I'm not going to bore or terrify our audience with my renditions. Believe me, you don't want to hear it. But yeah, look, hey, I watched Josie and the Pussycats. They were hot.
Yes, absolutely. I thought the same thing then, and I was a kid. I thought the same exact thing then. Yeah. I was too young for it, but I was like, there's something about this that I really like.
Yeah.
That's what I remember.
Oh man. Well, yeah, it's true. It was a formula that worked. That's the thing. And you had a captive audience, like you said. You got Saturday mornings, and then all of a sudden it was, there was the programming in the 70s after school, from 3 o'clock till 5 o'clock or whatever. You had the cartoon blocks, and there were numbers of shows that would have like the Banana Splits and
I love that.
other live action shows that showed cartoons. But
right.
Yeah, I know that was an animated show as well, but
it was both, right? It was a mix.
Yeah, there was the live action version, and then they would play other cartoons, and sometimes
I did love the Banana Splits.
Yeah. So
did you? I got to ask a couple of others in the 60s. Now, if you watched them, there was Johnny Quest.
Oh yeah.
Right, that was a good one. I enjoyed that. And Wacky Races, I enjoyed as well. Did you watch that one?
Yes, I did.
Again, I saw all these later on, but I was like, I enjoyed those shows. I really enjoyed everything about those cartoons, like that we mentioned.
Well, it's just cracking me up because we're just running down titles, because it's like it just brings up all these memories. Because there was another claymation show called Davey and Goliath that I actually enjoyed.
Yes.
It was very, it was a lesson-oriented, moralistic show, but it was lovely, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. There was. I
didn't realize that was like a church-produced show till like later on. I watched it also, and I didn't realize it till like afterwards.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I could tell that at the time, for some reason, I could tell that it was. I didn't know it was actually church produced, but I knew they were teaching, Christian lessons, and biblical lessons in the show. But it was very entertaining, and it all made sense. And
I liked it. Yes,
it was. Yeah, it was really, really fascinating to me. And just running down more titles. Kimba the White Lion. I loved that.
I never saw that. I read that. I never saw it.
Yeah. Again, another theme song that I could rattle off, and I'm not going to. Gigantor, the robot.
That
I ever see that?
Yes. I've seen episodes of that. Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, those Japanese animated.
Were you a Mr. Magoo fan or no?
No, I didn't like that character. I mean, he's blind and dumb and rich. It was not a combination I was particularly attracted to.
I remember I did like it. It wasn't one of my favorites, but I did like it. I went back and watched a couple of episodes like more as an adult, and I was like, okay, but I remember liking it as a kid somewhat.
But was Mr. Magoo a comic strip? Because a lot of these,
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I have a feeling it might have been, because there were like, I know, comic strips that turned into cartoons, and I thought maybe Mr. Magoo was one of them, but I'm not sure. I just didn't know where he came from really originally.
Well, voiced by Jim Backus, so that part I liked. I did like Jim Backus. So all right. So if I'm going to move into the 70s a little bit right now. One of the things that I loved in the 70s, and it wasn't even, it's listed under the cartoons, but it wasn't really a cartoon. It was like in between the cartoons, but I just love the Schoolhouse Rock ones. came out in the 70s, and I
Yeah.
loved everything about that. I've used them on. I passed tests. I know I passed tests in history based on the songs of
Yeah.
Schoolhouse Rock
Mm-hmm.
that I was thinking in my mind, and I was able to. And to this day, I know the preamble to the Constitution because of Schoolhouse Rock. Singing.
Yeah, basically all of the grammar I know is from Schoolhouse Rock. Conjunction, junction.
Right.
Okay, I'm singing. I swear, I promise you guys I wouldn't sing. But yeah, it was brilliant. It was brilliant, and
yes.
Who knows where that idea came from? It was, maybe a kind of a spin-off concept from Sesame Street in a way of teaching, a teaching method. Because the songs, the rhyming, I mean, it's like, all of that was so effective, and anyone who knows Schoolhouse Rock probably has the same memories and still remembers all of them too. Yeah. The educational lessons they taught.
I went several years ago. There was a Schoolhouse Rock tour of people singing the songs, and it was great.
Oh my God, what a great idea.
It was so much fun.
Oh, that's a great idea. Good grief.
You had all these adults singing along in the audience to all these, cartoon songs. So it was so much fun. I would love if they did it again. So I would take my kids, we aren't really kids anymore. They're like, but I would love to take them to that if they came again.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I had never heard of that before. That would be incredible to see.
What a couple of other titles. One, I'm sure that I was looking at the 70s, like I said, it was really where I came into cartoons. And that was there. You must have loved Star Trek, the cartoon.
No, not really.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't quite get into it. It was interesting to hear the original cast voicing the characters, but it was
the cast and the writers. It was like the same. It was like an episode.
I just didn't get into it. I don't know why. I didn't. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't necessarily aware of that the same writers, were involved either. It's something I would like to, I'd say, revisit, because I'm sure I know that I watched some episodes, but it just didn't really hold my interest that much, and I'm not sure why. Yeah,
because you're just like upset about the show not being the show still, or
I don't know. No, it just didn't appeal to me. You've got it in animation, and then the real show is running in syndication, right, pretty much at the same time. Right. I prefer to just watch the real show. That's the real shocked. People. Yeah,
I thought for sure that you would be like, oh yeah, I love that one.
No, so, I knew you were going to bring it up, and I knew you were going to be surprised.
What are the other ones in the 70s? I'll list some of mine after, but what are some of the other ones in the 70s that you did like? Were you still into cartoons at that point, or no?
I was not. I mean, see, this is when I started looking, I thought I was still watching the older stuff and not really watching. You
started working by then already.
Oh yeah, well definitely. I was working. I was a young teen, preteen teen in high school in the 70s. So I just was no longer really watching that kind of entertainment. I mean, this is going to sound like so arrogant, but all I wanted to do was get a job voicing one. That was my goal. I
even
didn't
then care in the 70s too. That's what you thought about that?
Yeah, because they were big. They were big. Just being pragmatic, they were big money gigs. If you got a hit cartoon going, those people made so much money. I mean, a successful Hanna-Barbera series was a very lucrative deal, and they were hard to get into because the voiceover people that dominated the 70s and the Hanna-Barbera cartoons, they were all the same voices and practically all the cartoons except for some of the feature voices. So, right. and then in the late 70s and early 80s, the cartoons, I don't want to jump ahead here because I'm sure you've got other 70s cartoons you want to talk about, but they became extremely commercialized. It was no longer about entertainment. It was about selling toys. So it was this paradigm shift in the entire television animation market that, again, we'll pick that up in a minute. So I didn't really have any contemporary cartoons that I watched in the 70s, just the same ones that I had been watching.
You did I'll skip ahead here too, but you did do voices in cartoons later on, didn't you? I mean,
yes, yeah, I have probably half a dozen credits, and one I did pick up, and this was in the early 80s. I got a regular role on a brand new cartoon called The Ring Raiders, and again, this is going back to this whole commercialism thing that was happening in animation. It really started with a company called Saban Entertainment, and they just what they did was they purchased Japanese animation and then revoiced it with American actors. So there was very little expense in terms of, they were already produced, and things like Transformers and all those shows were originally just Japanese cartoons. Maybe not that one, maybe there were other ones, but I think I'm right about it. But anyway, that became the Saturday morning block with things like My Little Pony and these other animated series geared towards children. And all they did was run commercials for the toys from the show that you were watching. So if you're watching Transformers, every commercial was your Transformers toys, same with My Little Pony and all these others. And this gradually started to really catch on. And kind of the reason why those gigs, those jobs, those animation jobs were so profitable was because they would do very limited numbers of episodes, maybe 10 or 15, and then they just ran them over and over and over and over again. So the residuals were massive. Wow. And then, as long as the toys were doing well, the show was going to be on the air. The GoBots was a Hanna-Barbera production, and I didn't do that entire run, but I did voice, I forget the character's name in it during the last season, and also the movie that came out. I voiced the young character in it. There was another young actor by the name of Sparky Marcus that started doing the voice for that character and ended up stopping. I don't know why he stopped, and I came in to replace him. But I had been gunning for something for a long time because I thought, because it's just easy. You go in for an hour, you record 2 or 3 episodes, and you're out. And it's so much fun, and it's so much fun. But I ended up booking one show called Ring Raiders. And we were going to record 10 or 12 episodes, I believe it was. And it was all the big name voiceover talent was there. And I can't remember all of their names. I'd have to look them up on IMDb because I just don't remember. But it was just part of that core group of really, really talented voiceover actors that were voicing these characters. So here we are recording all this stuff. And then the producer said, okay, we just, like one day he just said, just so you guys know how big we anticipate this show being, you need to take a trip to Toys R Us. And we all looked at each other and thought, what are you talking about? I mean, the show hadn't even come on the air. We were just recording it. They were still doing the animation. They said, go to Toys R Us. So I go to my local Toys R Us, and I walk towards the middle of the store, and all of a sudden I turn down an aisle, and an entire aisle. And if people don't know Toys R Us, it was all Ring Raiders merchandise. I mean, from the figures to the dolls and Ring Raiders was this group of characters where we have these powerful rings. And when we needed to fight crime, we, drew upon the power of the ring. And then we all turned into these fighter jets that would then go, combat the bad guys. So there were the planes, and then the coloring books and the games. And then it was just like, I looked and I said, all I could say to myself was, I'm going to be freaking rich. And I was so excited. And then literally, as this happens so many times in show business and in many other aspects of any adventure like this, because these cartoons were purely commercials for products
Right.
and had
Yes.
no entertainment value whatsoever, a huge consortium of parents in the United States got together and started
Wow.
to harass the FCC, saying our children are just watching garbage just so they can sell toys. We
Right.
want them to have something to watch. And they actually got the FCC to change its rules. And from that point forward, you could no longer release a toy and then produce a cartoon to sell the toy. You had to create an original cartoon that had entertainment value. And when it was successful, you could then bring out toys. Yep. It was a huge deal. It was one of the biggest victories for parents, really, in terms of what their kids were consuming in United States history. It was a very big deal. And the decision came down from the FCC that you could no longer do that while we were recording our 10th episode of Ring Raiders. And they just started to air the show. They aired 4 episodes and it was canceled because of this federal FCC decision. And so the rest of the episodes were never aired, but we did do, I think they did the pilot episode. They released it on VHS as an animated, home entertainment movie, which I actually have a copy of in my collection, not behind me here, but so I'm digressing back to my career, even though we're talking about cartoons, because it was such a fascinating, going back and looking at the history of televised cartoons, how it was all adult oriented. Then it shifted into capturing kids' attention, but capturing their attention for the sole purpose of selling product, not to entertain them, with a half-hour block of,
I
cartoons.
just looked it up. First of all, it came out in '89, which makes sense. You had Roscoe Lee Brown in it too. It's great. Now, do you record with the others, or you just recorded your part solo?
No, we all recorded together. That was what made it so fun. For television animation, yes, we recorded as a group. It would be a circle of music stands with our scripts in front of us and chairs if we wanted to sit in, and we could stand, whatever we wanted to do. But it was a circle of people with microphones going all the way around, and we would just go back and forth and do our lines. It was a grueling, very, very actually grueling process, because animation performance has to be 10 times bigger than a live action performance, which is usually more subtle, even if it's overt and comical or whatever. You really have to pour a great deal of energy and punch your words and make certain lines. If it's exciting, you got to go so over the top. And it's the director, the animation director, is there trying to push you and push you and push you and push you. So we'd go around, it'd be one line, my line, then this line, then that line, then come back to my line. If my line if it wasn't enough for the director, he'd say, one more time, more energy, one more time, more energy. And then you just keep doing the line over and over and over again until he said, okay, good, moving on. Then the next person would do theirs. And so they would have an hour's worth of hour and a half worth of audio that then they had to cut together into the show. So it was amazing to work on. I mean, these people were absolutely incredible.
Well, I think, first of all, I think voiceover artists are like fantastic. I think it's all the little, like you just said, all the little takes they do, getting the emotion out, the inflections, what's needed in the scene, and just making all the characters fun. So, I mean, I'm glad you got to do that. That's why, I enjoyed so much when Richard Horvitz was on, the same thing, because, all these great cartoons that, you see all the work that goes into them.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot of respect.
Yeah, it's a lot. But, part of the spread out from the Saturday morning came in, like you were talking about, when cable television finally came around and Disney was doing their programming, and then Warner Brothers was doing their programming, and then Cartoon Network suddenly came around, and you had a 24/7 opportunity to consume animation, which I think is amazing. And I still think from an adult an adult programming standpoint, I think Cartoon Network's Adult Swim block at night is still one of the most brilliant groups of just TV shows, period. I mean, it happens to be animation, amazing shows that I truly loved. I don't really watch it anymore. I used to watch it quite a bit, not too long ago, but it's really amazing how, and I think the FCC was right. I think they needed to do that to reinvigorate creativity. Sometimes you have to be shut down when you're going one direction in order to open up and start to do something that's more valuable.
Well, you came on after probably the biggest one that did that genre was like He-Man and the Masters of the Universe.
Oh yeah,
it was just
and
Transformers too. Yeah, but it was just
He-Man really.
That
show rode that golden age of toydom and commercialism in a huge way. Absolutely.
And that's because I remember at the time just thinking this is, and I was already a little bit older, I think, when He-Man came out, but I still watched it. I enjoyed it, but I loved the character Skeletor and everything. But it was the commercial for the toy, and that a lot of the cartoons, and like you said, in the 80s, that's exactly what it was. It was just commercials for toys. And first of all, how stupid was Skeletor that that could not see He-Man was Prince Adam? It's just. It's the same. There was not even a change in anything. It's just, let me take off my shirt and now I'm He-Man. So,
right. Yeah.
Not a really bright villain, but yeah, I enjoy it. But all those things, and like even the Smurfs to an extent, although the Smurfs was a comic strip first, but yeah, it was like all these cartoons based on other things, not original cartooning.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, definitely, and again, made a lot of companies very, very, very wealthy. I mean, it's it's so funny because I think why is a parent upset? I mean, the shows weren't completely devoid. I didn't think they were completely devoid of entertainment value, because I mean, how much different. Scooby-Doo or mysteries, and you have the action animation shows where they're good versus evil and all of that stuff. To me, they still had some redeeming value on their own without the commercialism side, but kids want to buy things they're familiar with. They don't want dolls and toys that they don't know. So I didn't see the problem with it, but I was never a parent, so I couldn't fully appreciate what they were trying to do. But it was a paradigm shift in the industry for sure. Moving away
before
from
we go back to the 70s, which we skipped the whole decade, I just got to ask what was Roscoe Lee Brown like? Because I think he was great actor.
Oh, he was he was just as suave and dapper and sophisticated sounding as he was in all the characters he played. He was a lovely man, really
great
lovely man.
Voice too. Yes.
I was just gonna say, like an amazing voice. He didn't have to do anything; he just spoke.
Well, all right. So let's get back to the 70s because we skipped, and there was a few bunch of others that I did watch at the time. That we said Star Trek with the main cast. There was Partridge Family with the original cast too. The Partridge Family 2200 AD with the original cast, except for David Cassidy and Shirley Jones, which I watched. But I loved his Super Friends. I loved during that era. What else? Dastardly and Muttley came out during the 70s. You also had Laugh Olympics. You didn't watch any of these, right? So I loved all of these. Yeah,
the Dastardly one I did watch. Yes, I came across that one, and I would watch that one. But you're it's going to be the Jonathan show now because you're running down titles I don't know anything about.
We also had Fat Albert. And
gosh, yes, of course.
Now, I can't even look at Fat Albert the same way now because of Cosby, but I really can't.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it was.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the cartoon at the time, and it's another thing. You try to separate the artist from the work, and I did enjoy the cartoon, but it's like, how could this this guy that's so full of family values and entertainment be this other person too? So that's one of the things that bother me when I look back at Fat Albert now.
Oh yeah, well, you really can't help yourself. I mean, that's I couldn't agree more.
You also had cartoons. The Jacksons had their cartoons. The Osmonds had their cartoons. Groovy Ghoulies, which you probably didn't watch either. It's a monster one.
Nope.
You don't remember that?
Nope. Nope.
And here's some of the others that I did like at the decade. I watched, the Amazing Chan and the Chan Clan, which would probably never get on today because, so never get on. But I enjoyed that because of more mystery solving. I love mystery solving cartoons, as you can tell. So there was so many.
Well, the mysteries engaged you. It engaged your thinking. You there was always the. It was very all of those. Even the one I can say probably about the ones I've not seen. You've got the bad guys the villain is introduced in the beginning, and you just have to figure out who it is, and by virtue of the clues. So at least it had you thinking about what was going on, other than just watching something happening. So I get the appeal of those completely.
I'll say the clues were not always there. It's like the clues of like the protagonist at the end, so, here's why it is. And the clues were not always there in the package.
Oh, okay. Well,
you couldn't follow along.
I stand corrected.
Not always, but it was still fun for me just watching those things. But like I said, and Hong Kong Phooey. How could I forget Hong Kong Phooey? Another.
Oh, I remember Hong Kong Phooey. Yep, I remember that one. Yeah.
But that was the decade that I really just sat in front of the TV. I just did not move on Saturday mornings. I was like, and really we did not have the VCR or anything like that. It was before VCRs. So that was one of the conundrums, which you had 3 networks of cartoons. Which one do I watch? Which one do I sacrifice? You could not watch all of them. You could not record something for later on. You watched it and that was it. So you had to make really like a corporate decision or an executive decision, which one I'm going to take it.
God. Yeah, that must have been tough.
It was terrible. So, but that was it. But like I said, that was the main era for me. That's what I think of with the Saturday morning cartoons for the most part, like being a kid. And I mentioned to you, like we moved away to another, we moved away, 79, moved to Israel, came back in 81. So I was a little bit older, but I was already like coming into a teen. I was a teen then, but I made sure to watch cartoons. And by the 80s, you were not watching them at all, pretty much, except you were in one. I mean, but.
No, I really wasn't. I would check them out occasionally just to be up to speed to a certain extent on what was on the air. So I was aware of it. But no, by then I wasn't watching a lot of television at all, actually. I mostly went to movies. That was my primary thing. Back then. I mean, I did watch some television. I can't say I didn't. But yeah, no, I was done with cartoons. Yeah.
So, because I was looking at the 80s list here, I'll mention some of them. So, because I think, like I said, even though like that was the 70s was the height for me, I think my favorite cartoons came about in the 80s. I was already a teen, and I still watched. I didn't move. I still watched them all. I see here like. DuckTales, Dungeons and Dragons, Muppet Babies. It was on Inspector Gadget. And which are the other ones there? We mentioned He-Man. You also had other toy ones: Thundercats and Care Bears, Transformers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. What one I did love, SpiderMan and His Amazing Friends, which Kathy Garver was in, which we interviewed. So all those were like, I think that was like, even though like I said, the 70s was my main time watching, the 80s were my favorite cartoon.
Well, what was, I mean, what is the overall appeal of, because that's, you consumed a whole lot. What was it that drew you to
I
them?
watched again. You know what? I thought the stories got better and more sophisticated, to me at least, in the 80s.
Uh-huh.
The 80s cartoons. I thought it wasn't, even though, like, cartoons, you think of it's for kids. I did think the stories were interesting. The plots were much more interesting than beforehand. So that's one of the things that I did like. And I was, like I said, I was already a teen. I was like, 13 on in the 80s. And so it was, and I still watched cartoons. I didn't leave. And it was like, and I didn't care who knew it. I was not embarrassed. I was watching these cartoons since Saturday mornings.
Well, it's, I mean, great. I mean, that's absolutely awesome. I mean, huge, obviously huge. You've got a great career as a result of all of your consumption of all of this material. It's, and I think that's the other thing that I like about it, hearing stories about people who, yes, they allowed themselves and to go ahead and immerse in themselves in these worlds, when all of a sudden you draw from that in the creative pursuits that you then decide to take up as an adult. I say the general you, when you go down these roads. I mean, for the longest time, video games was such a, it was something that parents tried to dissuade their children from playing or limit the amount of time they play them. And, working in video games because you had a love for it today is one of the most lucrative professions you can get into. I mean, it's,
absolutely.
So the entire industries have cropped up because of our youthful enjoyment of this type of entertainment. And so I think it's amazing. Being unapologetic about it is perfectly acceptable to me.
So once you were like an adult, have you watched any cartoons like 90s on at all, or no?
I can't say I have. I mean,
not even like Simpsons or South Park or things.
South Park I did. Oh God. Okay. All right. I have a great South Park story for you, and I have a great Simpsons story for you. I was at Disney Studios working on an ADR job, and the engineer, the recordist, the gentleman who sits in the booth and sets all the levels and makes sure our recordings sound crisp, clear, and perfect. And he's still there today. His name is Doc Kane. And he used to come across the most obscure things that he would then play for us. And, during when we have a break, he'd say, "Hey guys, you want to listen to this, or you want to see this?" And one day, I don't remember what film we were working on, but one day we were breaking for lunch, and he said, "Listen, you guys, you're breaking for lunch. I'm putting up a reel of something that I think anybody who might be interested in it needs to just take a look at it. You don't have to, this is not part of our day's work. I just wanted to share something with you guys." And so I thought, what the heck, this has got to be something. So I stayed behind. Well, he ended up playing is now everyone has seen it, but the original 5-minute little South Park, the Jesus Christ versus Santa Claus fight. And we talk about this a lot, the impact of seeing something so profound, so genius, and so amazing for the very first time when you have no context for it. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know where it came from. And it was just this 5-minute short film that just assaulted my senses like nothing I had ever seen before. And it was their original paper cutout animation of that little story. And when it was over, I mean, the few people who hung around, and it was mostly guys, I don't know why it was guys, the girls that weren't interested, we were laughing hysterically and thinking, my God, what the heck is this? And Doc ended up telling us that this videotape had been passed all over Hollywood. One of them ended up at the studio. Somebody ended up giving it to him. He watched it and thought it was the most amazing thing he'd ever seen. And it turned out that was the origins of how South Park got picked up as a series, because I believe the story goes George Clooney saw it somehow. George Clooney financed all of the reproductions of this show, of this little short, on VHS. Wow. And it was instrumental in helping those guys send it out to everywhere. They just sent it everywhere. Just said, just watch this. And they ended up getting their deal, and the rest is history. I loved South Park. I did. I watched it pretty religiously, but see, that's an adult cartoon.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. And so, you know, it's on in the later night block. I mean, I kind of some of the titles of the other shows I did like to watch on Adult Swim. Rick and Morty. Escaping me. Rick and Morty. I love Rick and Morty. I just think that's genius. Absolute genius. Futurama. Love Futurama.
Oh, I love Futurama as well. Loved it. Yes.
I didn't get into The Simpsons very much, but I auditioned for The Simpsons. I auditioned for
really.
Everyone in Hollywood auditioned for The Simpsons.
Wow.
So that's not anything terribly unique, because it was a weird. It was the weirdest audition I've ever been on. It did make sense to me. No one could explain what The Simpsons was. They couldn't tell you what they wanted from you as a voice. They just said, you know, just read the dialogue, you know, do whatever you want. And I had no idea what to do. It was a horrible audition. I was terrible, absolutely terrible. But the interesting thing about it is that Nancy Cartwright, who clearly, obviously, became Bart Simpson, I used to work with in ADR. So she and I worked on several movies together. I knew her back before she, you know, when she was a quote unquote struggling actress, like everyone was a struggling actor back, you know, starting their careers. And all of a sudden I see her name up there as Bart Simpson. I thought, oh my God, good for her. And I didn't know how gifted she was as a voiceover talent. Right. She was very good as a looper, and I really enjoyed working with her, but I didn't know she did these amazing voices. And so I worked with her before she got it. I auditioned for the stinking show, totally confused. Everyone was confused. Everyone was looking at their copy going, they would come out and say, I don't know what they want. I don't know what they want. I don't know what they want. And of course, the rest is history there also. We were all baffled by what Matt Groening was trying to do, but he knew what he was trying to do, and they knew what they wanted when they heard it. And, you know, of course, it's an amazing show. I just didn't watch it very regularly.
I watched it more. I stopped watching it, you know, recent years, but I did watch it religiously for a while. Very entertained. That, you know, I don't know why I stopped at all. No particular reason. Just, you know, I haven't watched it in the last few years. I have started watching. You know, my son did get me into Rick and Morty. So I started. He loves that show. In the 2000, and he also loves Ben 10, which we discussed in another episode. Yeah. But my daughter loved this series Avatar. I don't know if you've seen that one either. Early 2000s one.
No, I have never heard of it. Actually,
really? So
yeah.
So it's funny in the 2000s, like, you know, all the ones that, you know, my kids are now like looking back at that time as their golden age of cartoons. You know, I'm like 20, 30 years before then. So
well, I in the little bit of additional research I did for today's show, looking up the Flintstones, because I just wanted to know what years it was on the air, because it was just always on the air to me. So I thought it was originally in the broadcast. The original broadcast ran longer than it actually did, but there was a little side note in there that said that the Simpsons is the only animated series that has now run longer and been more financially successful than the Flintstones. The Flintstones was the most financially successful, longest running, and I guess they have to say it in longest running in terms of how long it had been consistently on the air in syndication, because it certainly didn't.
Right.
It was only six seasons of episodes, but has been on the air for so long, and now The Simpsons finally is the only show that's overtaken it.
Well, it's funny because I was about to say that, you know, just as we were just talking about it, I don't know how many kids now, and I know it's such a popular, what at least was, would know the Flintstones or the Jetsons now. I don't know if it's on so much anymore for kids to know it.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't either.
And it's such a, you know, it's such a big iconic show, and I don't know that a lot of kids would know it now, which is sad to me a little bit.
Yeah. Well, it holds up to this day.
Yes, no, absolutely. I still love the shows. If I'll see it, but I don't see it. And that's the thing. I don't see them on anymore, really. And maybe if you had to go to like a Cartoon Network or something, or Boomerang actually might have them, but I don't know. But I don't see them like regularly on the air at all. So I got to ask now. Okay, so if we were talking now, we mentioned a little bit before. It doesn't have to be the best of what you think is the best cartoon of all time. Your favorites. Which is your Mount Rushmore of cartoons? Your 4 that you would put on the Mount Rushmore of cartoons. Ike Eisenmann's favorites. Yes.
Gumby, the Flintstones, and I have to say the Looney Tunes cartoons, and then I'm going to throw Tom and Jerry in there just because I loved watching that show so much.
all 4 from the back. You're picking all the classics. Now I'm going to feel stupid.
Yeah,
because I'm probably picking all classics.
You set up the rules. I'm just following them. I think my 4 that I'd put on there is definitely Scooby-Doo. I would put on there DuckTales. I love that show. So I loved it so much, and I still love it when I see. And my all-time favorite is going to be there, which I saw as an adult, and it's about Phineas and Ferb is my all-time favorite cartoon. I've never loved a cartoon as much as that. It cracks me up every single time I watch it, and I love Doofenshmirtz. It just kills me, and it's one of those things that having kids was my excuse for putting it on. And I would sit there and a lot of times, and I realize I'm watching it. My kids have left the room like a long time ago. And I'm still watching episodes. Yeah.
And here's my 4th. And again, I don't think it's like looked at with reverence by a lot of people, but it was one of my favorites. I loved the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon. I enjoyed that so much growing up. And I think it was not on very long, but I did enjoy it that much that I still look back, and I bought another one that I bought the DVD complete series as well.
Awesome. Well, there you go.
So that's it. But I think we covered a lot of them. There's a lot that we left out. But
oh my God, yeah, it's amazing how many titles were just throughout the 60s. I didn't even really look up all the titles that hit the airwaves, showing our age again in the 70s. But yeah, my gosh, there was so much content being produced. It was amazing.
Again, I missed that Saturday morning, that excitement for Saturday morning there too, but it's a different time now. So,
sure. Yeah, there you go.
Well, let us know in the comments. Let us know what some of your favorites, what we missed, if you agree, disagree, and what your favorites were. And again, this has been Pop Culture Retro with Ike Eisenmann and Jonathan Rosen, and thanks for watching, and please subscribe.
Thank you for listening to Pop Culture Retro, where no one was hurt during the making of this podcast.